everybody. Now, again, before we really get into Module 5, let's just take a quick look at an introduction here, right? So it says the main reason we prepare lesson plans is to make sure that our students are focused on learning some aspects of the English language. But also, it's to help us organize our ideas as well, right? That's not written there, but of course it helps us, especially those of us who are maybe a little bit disorganized and like don't have a, I don't know, just aren't that good at following a schedule, like myself. But anyhow, okay. Now it says here, we can easily think of the main components of a lesson plan, like I discussed with the original material, right? Like we need an aim or aims, we need a new language contained within that lesson, we need stages, etc., right? However, there are many things we should consider when making a lesson plan that was not discussed previously, right? So in this module, we'll look at the following questions, like what does a lesson plan actually contain besides just the basics, right? What questions should we ask ourselves before preparing a lesson plan, right? How can we add variety to our lesson plans? How do we assess the effectiveness of a lesson plan, which is quite important? And lastly, what is practical lesson management, right? So we're going to kind of look at those questions one by one throughout these units here. And hopefully after this module, you'll have a much better idea about how to make good, effective lesson plans. So I'll see you again in Unit 1. Okay guys, so Unit 1, what does a lesson plan involve? Or what does it actually involve? So of course, there are many possible additional characteristics or ways of looking at lesson plans, which we have not discussed so far. Anyhow, which are less obvious, but also important, right? Now, one way to become familiar with these aspects is by looking at some metaphors for lessons, right? Or lesson plans. Okay, now this might seem a little bit weird first, but take a look at box 5.1. Here are some examples of metaphors for a lesson. Now, you guys hopefully know what a metaphor is, right? A metaphor is something that kind of stands for something else, right? It's making a comparison between two things with something that doesn't appear to be similar but can be, right? Okay, so for our metaphors for a lesson, we have things like a variety show, you know, where there's a bunch of different people and they're discussing different topics, right? Variety shows are popular, not so popular in North America, to be honest, but I think quite popular in East Asia, Brazil, Mexico, etc. Anyhow, so variety show, climbing a mountain, that might seem like a really strange metaphor. Sharing a meal, a wedding, a menu, a conversation, doing the shopping, a soccer game, a concert, or consulting a doctor. So you might be like, what is the connection between these things here and a lesson or a lesson plan? Okay, well, we'll make more sense once we go over a couple of stages. So take a look at our task. It says exploring metaphors. Now, stage 1 here says choosing a metaphor. Okay, so here's the important part. It says, which one of the metaphors in the box do you think best expresses, in your opinion, the essence or the nature of a lesson? Okay, so don't really think of just a lesson plan, like a written lesson plan. Think of a lesson, right? A lesson, whether that's an English class or a guitar lesson or a kung fu lesson or boxing lesson, something like that, right? Take a look at the metaphors and pick one that you think kind of has the same essence or the same nature as a lesson. Now, there's no correct answer here. And if you can't find a metaphor that you think kind of suits a lesson, try to think of your own, right? Now, moving on to stage 2, this is where you would compare it, but this is kind of a problem. It says here, if you are working alone, you can just skip to stage 3. However, if you can work with someone else, so with a partner or in a group, please try to share your ideas, right? And again, there's no correct answer. If somebody says, oh, I thought it was this, and oh, well, I thought it was this, but your answer is better, I'm an idiot. No, that's not what this is about, right? Just share your selection and the reasons why you thought that was the best metaphor, right? You don't need to come to some kind of conclusion. Just share your ideas, that's fine. But if you're working by yourself, don't worry about it. That's just fine. Okay, now stage 3 says analysis. So some of the main components that you may have thought of when thinking about it or discussing it in a group are discussed in the section below. Have a look at the section and try to relate these points to your own choice. Okay, now before we do that, again, for the people who are working alone, what you were supposed to do in stage 1 was to pick one metaphor that you think it best suits kind of what a lesson is, right? So you might have thought like, okay, climbing a mountain, right? Or watching a soccer game, or having a conversation. Now, for me, I don't know, so many of these metaphors here I think could be a good match for what a lesson actually is. Again, there's no correct answer. For me, I would probably pick a wedding would be the best metaphor for a lesson plan. Now, to briefly explain why, I think because, you know, a wedding has a beginning and an end, and we kind of know what's going to happen in the middle, right? Is really well organized. And to me, that kind of matches what a lesson is about, because I think a lesson and a lesson plan should be well organized, like a wedding. So that's why I chose that. But the other answers are not incorrect, right? So again, hopefully that helps you think about which one you would like to pick, and then think about why. What does that kind of represent what a lesson is about, right? Think about the reason. Now, the next part we're going to do is, I think, actually kind of interesting. We're going to look at the characteristics of a lesson plan based upon maybe what your choice was, right? So this is really making you think about, like, what do you believe a lesson plan is about? There's no correct answer here, but I think it's quite interesting. But let's take a break quickly first, and then we'll get back into it.